It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us. I'm going to remind you this program, or this portion of the program, rather, is brought to you by the Patriots VAC 746. Now, you've heard me talk about them before. They are on a mission to educate the people of Arkansas about your Second Amendment rights, specifically your Arkansas rights when it comes to what the Arkansas Constitution says, when it comes to what Act 746 says, and the decriminalization of firearms and the possession of firearms here in the state, the concept of constitutional carry, the concept of permitless carry, meaning you don't have to have a permit to carry open or concealed, if you read what the law says, and they are out to educate. So go to facebook.com, search for Patriots of Act 746, and ask to be a member of this group and join the online sensation today. They really are educating. They hold meetings. They have chapters across the state, and it's just been a thrill ever since we started interviewing the Patriots of Act 746. When I became a member of the group, it's just great. They're very fantastic people. One of those individuals who's fantastic, her name is Amy Freeman, and she joins us now. She's a member of the Patriots of Act 746. Amy, welcome to the program.
Hello, how are you doing, Paul?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you doing?
I'm well. Thanks for having me today.
Yes. So, Amy, tell us about how you first found out about Patriots of Act 746.
Well, I wasn't actively seeking out the group, but as usual in the evenings when you're sitting on the couch next to your spouse and you're comparing articles on Facebook, he says, look at this article. And I looked at it and I was like, well, what's this group? And he said, it's Patriots of Act 746. I'm like, oh, okay. And so I started looking into it, and I joined the main chapter. And, of course, when you're invited into the group, you have the option of choosing a chapter in your regional area.
What?
I happen to live in Old Trough, Arkansas, in Independence County, so I am a member of the Northeast Arkansas chapter. I will say this. It has pretty much changed my life. I mean, I've lived in the area for 10 years, and I haven't really had a lot of friends to speak of, which is kind of sad. But since I've joined the group, it's become a springboard into other things. It's opened my eyes to what my rights are as a citizen of this state and this, of course, the country. We have our Second Amendment rights as Americans, but in Arkansas we have rights too. And not only have I learned about what my rights are, I became a concealed carrier back in 2016, and I thought, well, that's my only option, which isn't true, obviously. I found out after the fact, after paying for my permission slip, that I didn't have to have one, that I could have carried open or concealed without a permit. So, now I found out that, as a carrier, I'm actually restricted. I mean, if I'm stopped by the police for a minor traffic violation, I have to tell them, hey, I'm armed. Just letting you know that for your to ease your anxiety. And I didn't have to do that. But now that I do have a permit, I have certain rules I have to follow to be compliant with the law. I was listening to your program the other day, listening to David Ferguson speak, and he said that concealed carry is an option, it's not the option. So I want your listeners to understand that, they don't have to have a permit to open or conceal carry in this state. So, and when I say that Patriots has led me to other avenues, I found out about the campaigns on Patriots. I found out about our candidates. I found out about Jan Morgan. I found out about Linda Collins Smith. And from there, I became actively involved in both those campaigns. And, of course, I met many new and different people who have enriched my life, people that will always be in my life, who will always have my back, would give me the shirt off their back if they could. So, there's the legal aspect of knowing my rights, but there's also been kind of a social
think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for being with us today. Again, my name is Paul. You have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We are building a liberty machine with the truth. One of the ways you can help us build it is to call or text 870-275-9799. That's trolls and all. If you want to troll, you're welcome to text as well. You can sound off on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Conduit News, where we are broadcasting live there, as well as the YouTube. By the way, you go to the YouTube page and subscribe. Click the little bell to receive notifications, please. So we got a great show for you. Coming up at the bottom of this hour, we have a small business spotlight. I want to introduce you to Mr. Lionel Curry and his business. He's a barber, and he's got a great story. Also, we got a Conduit for Action quiz coming up at the top of the next hour. Also, so we got Amazon announcing that they want to build like a little mini storage or distribution facility in North Little Rock. That's a thing that's happening. There's a new article over at conduitforaction.org. Democrats few in number, but still screwing up Arkansas. Want to tell you about that. Also, at the bottom of the next hour, we'll be talking with talk radio host Chris Ann Hall. And what I want to get into, number one, well, first of all, Chris Ann Hall, on her website, she talks about how, she educates folks on the Constitution. We've done one interview with her before, and really excited to have her on again, and that she's gracious enough to come on the program. But she has this presentation where she presents, according to her website, the genealogy of the Constitution, the 700-year history, and 5 foundational documents that are the very roots of American liberty. I would like for her to get into that a little bit, but I would also like for her to get into Article 2 of the Constitution, the powers of the executive branch, because the President of the United States may very well be subpoenaed in the coming days by the Mueller investigation, by Robert Mueller. The President's attorney, Jay Sekulow, or President's attorneys, Jay Sekulow and Rudy Giuliani, excuse me, they're saying, look, he doesn't have to comply with the subpoena. He's the President of the United States. I just want to get her opinion on the powers of the executive branch, because in this case, he is the commander-in-chief. He's also the head of the executive branch. How could the Justice Department, which is under the executive branch, how could they then compel their boss to, you know what I'm saying? That's my thought on the whole subject, but I'd like to get her thoughts on the subject as well. So we got all that coming your way. Probably the biggest state headline in the program is going to be that the governor, Asa Hutchinson, has signaled that he is open to passing red flag laws here in the state. I read this morning and was shocked at first, but then I remembered who our governor is. I said, well, at some point you got to quit being surprised by this stuff. The governor open to gun control laws, red flag laws. He thinks it needs to be debated in the next legislative session. You have Senator Will Bond, a Democrat, who's drafting this legislation, red flag laws, meaning giving the government the power to confiscate your guns, things like that. And this is on the heels or in the wake of an article in the Democrat Gazette on Sunday that was an emotionally driven article. It was a scare tactic article to try to convince the people to take away the human right to self-defense of their neighbors. And, they're talking about the statistics of how many gun deaths or gun violence, how much gun violence there is here in Arkansas. We talked about it in our Patriots Vac 746 segment yesterday. And I just have to say, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more in the next hour, but what is going on? I mean, come on, Republicans, be Republicans, right? Be Republicans. The liberal media, they're terrified of guns, right? They try to blame the NRA. Well, the only reason the Republicans feel this way is because the NRA gives money to their campaigns. No. There are some Republicans legitimately that believe in the Second Amendment. They believe in the human right to self-defense. They believe that right comes from God, not is, given to the government to then sell back to the people. There are people that legitimately believe this. There are others that are scared of guns. There are others that want a guarantee. They want to take away somebody's right for the fake guarantee, because the government can't guarantee that you're going to survive today. They can't. They can try to claim. They can try to make you feel better. But the reality is, it's better. As far as I'm concerned, I want that responsibility. I want it. And I know you want it. And these gun laws, they don't do anything because the people who want to get the guns to kill somebody are going to get the guns whether or not you have a gun law in place or not. It's common sense. But there's the emotional argument of we have to be able to control the guns. We have to be able to control bad things that are happening. Listen, I got news for you. If you could confiscate every gun, there would still be violence. There would still be disagreements. There would still be murder. You know why? Because we're human beings. Anyway, we'll talk a little bit about that. It's just, what is the difference? Somebody tell me the difference between Asa Hutchinson and Jared Henderson. Jared Henderson is the Democrat, by the way, running against Governor Asa Hutchinson. And Asa Hutchinson is now signaling that he is shifting to the left, which he's done many, many times, but now the primary's over. Do you think the governor would come out and say that he is open to red flag gun control laws if the primary were still going on and he was still facing Jan Morgan? Do you think you think he would even have a comment on the subject? Yeah, exactly. Somebody tell me the difference between Jared Henderson and Asa Hutchinson. They both support Medicaid expansion under Obamacare. Now apparently they both are going to support gun control laws. What's the difference? I really feel like the Republican Party, all of the divides aside, there does need to be a serious conversation had within the Republican Party as to whether or not you're taking the support for Republicans across the state for granted. And if you take it for granted forever, you're going to lose support in a big way. The phone number, 870-275-9799. If you would like to contribute to the program, you can call or text. Let's start with some national headlines. Well, I say start, we're 13 minutes past the hour. But let's start with the national headlines. President Donald Trump yesterday making good on the conversations he had, apparently, with Senator Rand Paul about the revoking of the security clearance of John Brennan, the former CIA director, who, if you actually look at his record, is, he's accused of doing a lot of things here. Isn't this the guy that said he didn't have any idea the CIA would never spy on Senate staffers and everything else? And then, of course, it came out that the CIA was monitoring, was it their emails and that sort of thing? Yeah. But, yeah, he's on CNN using his security clearance to be a talking head, using it for monetary gain. Now, whether or not he's actually getting current top-secret information, CNN doesn't know that. CNN maybe employs him because of the idea that he could get top-secret information. They don't know. But we do have to remember we're dealing with the CIA here. We do have to remember that the United States government is not monolithic. It is very possible that there are other channels that we know nothing about where John Brennan, using his top secret security clearance, does get information that he is able to then use against the Trump administration. Because he's not, he doesn't have America's interest in heart. He's just got an anti-Trump interest at heart. You know, there's absolutely no way of knowing. You're talking about the CIA. You're talking about the Central Intelligence Agency. You're talking about a surveillance intelligence agency that is very, very broad, and they have a lot of hands, a lot of irons in the fire, so to speak. We have no idea. We have no way of knowing for sure if there are other avenues for John Brennan to use his security clearance to get information, current top secret information. It's very possible. If you do just a brief Google search on some of this, you'll have at least some speculation on that subject. Here is Sarah Huckabee Sanders yesterday, press conference, reading a statement from the President of the United States. Listen.
I'd like to begin by reading a statement from the President. As the head of the executive branch and commander-in-chief, I have a unique constitutional responsibility to protect the nation's classified information, including by controlling access to it. Today, in fulfilling that responsibility, I've decided to revoke the security clearance of John Brennan, former director of the Central Intelligence Agency. Historically, former heads of intelligence and law enforcement agencies have been allowed to retain access to classified information after their government service so that they can consult with their successors regarding matters about which they may have special insights and as a professional courtesy. Neither of these justifications supports Mr. Brennan's continued access to classified information. First, at this point in my administration, any benefits that senior officials might glean from consultations with Mr. Brennan are now outweighed by the risks posed by his erratic conduct and behavior. Second, that conduct and behavior has tested and far exceeded the limits of any professional courtesy that may have been due to him. Mr. Brennan has a history that calls into question his objectivity and credibility. In 2014, for example, he denied to Congress that CIA officials under his supervision had improperly accessed the computer files of congressional staffers.
That's what it was.
He told the Council of Foreign Relations that the CIA would never do such a thing. The CIA's Inspector General, however, contradicted Mr. Brennan directly, concluding unequivocally that agency officials had indeed improperly accessed congressional staffers' files. More recently, Mr. Brennan told Congress that the intelligence community did not make use of the so-called Steele dossier in an assessment regarding the 2016 election, an assertion contradicted by at least two other senior officials in the intelligence community and all of the facts. Additionally, Mr. Brennan has recently leveraged his status as a former high-ranking official with access to highly sensitive information to make a series of unfounded and outrageous allegations, wild outbursts on the internet and television about this administration. Mr. Brennan's lying and recent conduct, characterized by increasingly frenzied commentary, is wholly inconsistent with access to the nation's most closely held secrets and facilities, the very aim of our adversaries, which is to sow division and chaos. More broadly, the issue of Mr. Brennan's security clearance raises larger questions about the practice of former officials maintaining access to our nation's most sensitive secrets long after their time in government has ended. Such access is particularly inappropriate when former officials have transitioned into highly partisan positions and seek to use real or perceived access to sensitive information to validate their political attacks. Any access granted to our nation's secrets should be in furtherance of national, not personal interest. For this reason, I have also begun to review the more general question of the access to classified information by government officials. As part of this review, I am evaluating action with respect to the following individuals: James Clapper, James Comey, Michael Hayden, Sally Yates, Susan Rice, Andrew McCabe, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, and Bruce Orr. Security clearances for those who still have them may be revoked, and those who have already lost their security clearance may not be able to have it reinstated. It is for the foregoing reasons that I have exercised my constitutional authority to deny Mr. Brennan access to classified information, and I will direct appropriate staff of the National Security Council to make the necessary arrangements with the appropriate agencies to implement this determination.
All right,
with that, I'll take your question.
All right, so that's Sarah Huckabee Sanders doing an excellent job. Now, I want you to think about something. So I want you to think about something for a second. I mean, this is pretty cut and dry, no big deal. Right? It's his constitutional authority to do this, to decide who gets to see classified information and who doesn't get to see classified information. And yet, what's the media got to do? The president is retaliating against one of his critics. There are some people that are claiming that this is a violation of the First Amendment. Listen to this senator. Who is this? We have this Senator Blumenthal, Democrat from Connecticut. Senator Richard Blumenthal went on CNN and said what the president just did was illegal. Now, these people, it's like they don't have a basic understanding of an 8th grade civics class. Listen to this.
So much for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you, Jim.
Is this an abuse of power by the president?
It is not only an abuse of power, it is illegal. It's abhorrent to our values and our national interest because we need critics like John Brennan to speak truth to power based on their vast experience. Here's someone who has served both Republican and Democratic presidents for decades, but also to use this kind of punishment to chill speech is a violation of the First Amendment. It's the reason why we have the First Amendment. This kind of criticism is core protected speech. When the founders of our great nation decided on the First Amendment, it was because the King of England would retaliate against his critics by punishing them. And so it is a clear violation, in my view, of the First Amendment.
Why is
you're
it
a
illegal
moron
for the president to do
this? This
my
guy's a
understanding
complete
from speaking
idiot.
to intelligence officials is he does have the authority to revoke anyone's security clearance.
He has the authority to do a lot of things, but not in a way that violates the law. And here what we see is from Sarah Huckabee Sanders' own mouth that the reason for it is supposedly baseless accusations against
the law. How? What law would it be against?
It would be against the First Amendment because accusations, in this case, they're far from baseless, but even if they were baseless, it is that kind of public discourse that is protected.
Stop.
To punish...
No one... Okay, John Brennan can still go on CNN and say whatever he wants to say. This isn't a violation of the First Amendment. My goodness, will save us from this guy ever voting on a piece of legislation again. Will somebody please save us from Senator Richard Blumenthal? Good grief. This guy has no concept of what is illegal and what isn't. I mean, he's either just being intellectually dishonest or he's a complete moron. And I'm serious about that. In order for what Richard Blumenthal says is a violation of the First Amendment, which is Donald Trump revoking the security clearance of the former CIA director John Brennan, who is corrupt, by the way. In order for that to be a violation of the First Amendment, we would all have to have security clearances. Joe, you'd have to have a security clearance. I'd have to have a top secret security clearance. If everybody had one and you were denying it to John Brennan alone, yeah, then it'd be, but we're not. This is about national security. This is about a guy who is obviously involved in a high-level plot against the President of the United States. All of the information suggests that. You're not going to hear that on CNN, though. You're not going to hear that on the Clinton News Network. But it's very obvious that John Brennan is a bad actor here, and he's desperately taking to CNN trying to fight this administration from uncovering the truth. Anyway, it's crazy, though, that you have the Democrats who are just so either intellectually dishonest or completely incompetent. My goodness, this man should never vote on a piece of legislation again if he thinks revoking the security clearance of John Brennan is a violation of the First Amendment. These people think the Constitution is this malleable document that they can just bend and shape to suit whatever their political needs are at the time. Very frustrating. A lot of politicians think that way as well, by the way. We got to take a break. You're listening to Conduit News. We'll be back in just a moment.
Aspect, it's really kind of open, avenues for me to meet new and different people. I live in a fairly remote area. My town is only 260 people, so there's not a lot of people to know. My husband's born and reared here, and so I'm a transplant from above the Mason-Dixon. So,
whereabouts above that Mason-Dixon? Whereabouts?
Well, my parents are from Ohio, and my dad's retired military, and his last duty station was Dover Air Force Base. So that is where I moved there when I was 5, and I grew up there, and so I'm a Yankee, pretty much. And so, but I'm down here now, and enjoying it. I'm enjoying the rural aspect, but I do obviously long for being able to get to the mall in less than an hour. Jonesboro is about 60 minutes from my house.
In Arkansas, every single hour there is a politician not getting what they want. For some, it's an absolute nightmare. The sleepless nights wondering if progress will ever come. Lying awake pondering how to grow government in this political climate. Asking questions like, why don't my constituents want to pay a few cents more in taxes? Everyday politicians feel abused and neglected. These politicians are starving for power. They're hungry, confused, and they don't understand why no one seems to care. Will you be a patriot and commit today to help these poor, starved for power public officials? It's simple. All you have to do is commit to stay silent and never dissent or stand in the way of your politicians' rise to power. Never speak up or get engaged to stop the growth of government. By committing to these simple steps, you will ensure the life of your politician will be filled with contentment and the respect they are desperately seeking, as well as campaign contributions from lobbyists.
This message brought to you by Aristocrats Serving Arkansas.
PHP Parody.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
Yes, we need to have an update on China here. By the way, here's the latest on China. According to CNBC, China and the United States will hold the next round of trade talks in late August. The Chinese are sending a delegation to the United States to talk about tariffs. They're coming back to the negotiating table. Wonder why? Wonder why the Chinese all of a sudden want to come back to the negotiating table. More on China. Apparently, according to reports here, go to this Breitbart article, the Chinese are angered by America First commitments in the U.S. Defense Act. The president signed a Defense Act, what was that, last week? Or no, on Monday. He signed it on Monday, claiming, let's see here, skipping down here. Chinese officials reacted with particular anger at the signing of this to strengthening the Committee on Foreign Investment of the United States. This is a big deal. Listen to this. What does the Committee on Foreign Investment of the United States do? It reviews all major foreign investments to determine whether they present a national security threat, claiming the measures were targeting China. In a statement on Tuesday, China's Commerce Ministry said they would comprehensively assess the contents of the act to determine a potential impact on Chinese industry, but remain strongly dissatisfied with the outcome. So they're saying here that in this Defense Act that President Trump signed, the National Defense Authorization Act, it strengthened this committee that looks at foreign investment. Meaning, I don't know, Chinese companies investing in Arkansas and Arkansas giving Chinese companies our taxpayer dollars and incentives and tax breaks and corporate welfare. Well, now there's going to be a little bit more scrutiny, apparently, on those investments. That's a good thing. Seems like the Trump administration, though, is skeptical of Chinese communist companies coming to Arkansas and the United States in general. That's what it seems to me, according to that report. China doesn't like it, but trade negotiations are back on. So, are you ex-military, Amy?
I am. I
wow,
spent
thanks for
about
your
3 years
service
in the Army.
Okay.
Well, my pleasure. It was my pleasure, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat if I wasn't as old as I am. But anyway, they wouldn't take me. I'm too old now. But yeah, I'm not retired, but I am prior service, and my last duty station was Fort Carson, Colorado, and I was deployed for a year in Iraq, and I served in a combat support hospital as a licensed practical nurse on a what would be like a med-surg unit.
Wow.
So, and then I used my GI Bill to go back to school, and I'm an RN, but I'm not currently working, staying at home, taking care of the kids while my husband goes off and works at places. So anyway.
Let me ask you this: is as you know, you found out about what your rights were thanks to the Patriots of Act 746 when it comes to your gun rights. You also found out about other campaigns and limited government and everything else.
Exactly.
Talk about women's role here in terms of Second Amendment rights or knowing your rights. It's a lot of times people have talked about before how the decriminalization of firearms here in the state of Arkansas is actually really much better in terms of for women in the sense that they have the equalizer now. They have the freedom to really protect themselves if they're in vulnerable situations. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I think it's a social construct, but I think, for one thing, people think gun rights is a right-wing issue, and it's not. It's an American issue. And not only is it an American issue, it's not just a man's issue. It's that whole thing, if you can't beat them, join them. And my husband he has his FFL, and he likes the guns and the gun culture. And I'm like, well, if you can't beat them, join them, right? If you want to spend some quality time with your husband. So it's not just a man's issue; it's a woman's issue. And I was looking at a statistic last, just a little bit. My computer was giving me problems, so I was looking online this morning before I came on, and I was looking at an article, and it says that as far as domestic violence is concerned, nearly 3 U.S. women are killed every day by intimate partners. And like you said before, the firearm is the great equalizer. Biologically, we women are I hate to say this, weaker. I mean, genetically, yes, we are. We don't have the muscle mass, so if we're overcome in a fight and we don't know hand-to-hand combat.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Gentlemen, welcome back to the program. So we do these segments. You're very much aware of them at this point. They're called Small Business Spotlight, just because we want to highlight Arkansas small business. We want to show it that it's the backbone of our economy. And we're going to do one of those segments now. I would like to welcome to the program. We have in studio with us, we have Mr. Lionel Curry is with us. Lionel, welcome to the program, sir.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. So tell us a little bit about your business. You're a barber, right? Lionel's Cuts. Tell us about Lionel's Cuts.
I own a business, Lionel's Cuts. It's my own barber shop over on 3800 South Caraway, Suite 7. I've been there for about a year, and I'm just kind of new into the barber industry. I'm just kind of taking off in that, but yeah, feel free to come. Anybody. Call me at 870-253-4791 and make an appointment.
So tell us a little bit about how you became a barber. I mean, I understand it wasn't necessarily the easiest path to own your small business. And how long you've been doing this?
Well, I've been in the barber industry for going on 3 or 4 years. It's just something my wife just kind of pushed me to do. Never had really just goals in life besides sports, never really thought about life. And so I just went from job to job, and so it was just something my wife kind of motivated me to do, to own my own business, be my own boss, not work for nobody, being able to talk about what I want to talk about, run my business how I want. And so it was just her idea, kind of, and I just took off with it. I mean, I'm a hands-on learner, and so I just took off with that, and here I am.
So you're here now. Tell us a little bit about what happened, that got you here. Your wife's a big motivator. So how long have y'all been married?
Let me make sure I get this answer right. We've been married 5 years. We've been together going on 13. We're night and day. We're totally different. She I don't know, man. She was just my tool, that God sent me, and I can't. Some things you just can't explain. Some things I don't think should be explained. But she's definitely my motivator. She's always pushed me to be better. I come hanging around the streets and never really just had. I've had guidance, but there's a difference between guidance and push. People that talk and tell you what you should do, and then there's people that's going to walk with you. And so she was just one of those ones that walk with me. The patience that you gotta have to deal with somebody like me. And so yeah, man. I mean, that's just. I can't explain it,
Yeah.
I mean, she's just she's my
awesome.
gift. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about owning a small business. Okay. Is that an easy thing to do?
I think it just depends on what you do. I don't think owning any business is going to be easy. I think there will come falls. I think it's important, in my opinion. In life, me falling at an early age helped me to understand how to get up at this age, instead of learning at this age and being able to not accept, how to get up. I think it was easier.
How did you fall? Can you tell us about that?
I mean, many ways. I mean, in the barber game, word is everything, so I never cut hair before. So, going out, cutting hair was just something that it took time. It took time to build my clientele up, and I explore in cutting all races. I don't just focus in one area. So that right there was a challenge alone. Just getting people of different races comfortable with me, comfortable with a different environment, just kind of coming just out the box, and so that was probably my biggest challenge, clientele-wise, was just making people comfortable, I guess you would say. And so that took time. I mean, there was days, one head a week. I've had one head a week the whole week, and so I mean, those probably were the hardest times to try to have your goal and what you want to do with your business, in God's plan, because I want to serve God at the same time. And then, at the same time, accepting defeat. Like I said, it's hard to get up sometimes, and so, I mean, with him, he always taught me how to get up. So, I mean, God is my key. So, it was easy for me.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about that. I mean, I know I talked to you in your, I guess we've spoken before. And you did talk a lot about how when you found God, what that has done in your life to propel you to be who you are now. I think that's true with a lot of people. But talk a little bit about that. I mean, I know right now you're very active in church, youth group, volunteering, things like that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I guess when I really just surrendered myself to him and to my church, and really when I surrendered myself to my wife, like I said, God placed her in my life for a reason. And so I think that was my first step. I think she was going to be my guide. Not saying that's why, but just in my heart, I feel like
he uses a lot of people, and
right.
God certainly used my wife for my
right.
good.
And I mean, it's just she was the only one that could get to me because she was the only one that really had my heart, Of course, family has your heart too, but there's just always one person, that I think, in my opinion, that is going to have somebody's heart that they're going to, care the most about their opinion, I care the most about my wife's opinion. I didn't really care, the family and stuff like that, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't know, man. I just I started with her, and everything else just kind of fell in place. I started going to church more. I started getting out my comfort zone in church. Kind of open my eyes more to the church.
Yeah.
And not just being what I wanted. You know what I mean? Because I think that a church can serve many purposes. Some people go for to get the word. Some go for fellowship. I mean, it's just it's the challenge was to me is to find what gave me a flame, and so I got involved with the youth, and I mean, I just know that I wish I had a different life as a kid, and so I just use that motivation to implant in our youth, and so.
Yeah.
That's kind of what really just gave me the fire was our kids, our kids and our youth.
When you were growing up and you were, like you said you were in the streets, what did you think you were going to be? I mean, did you think you were going to own your own business? Did you think you were going to take
basketball player or football player, I mean, that always, basketball kept me out of trouble, We, as a kid, we ran the streets, it's just something you did back in our generation. It's not necessarily mean that, that you're just involved in everything. You're just around some things, but it's just, that was just what we was around. And so, I think everybody in life, God gives you a choice. And so I always, I think basketball was always just, my thing. I thought I wanted to be a basketball player or a football player. I never thought beyond that, school or nothing. I wanted to play college basketball. I never thought about school. I just knew I wanted to play college basketball. And so, no, man, I never thought, nothing of that, of owning my own business or even cutting hair, period. It just never crossed my mind.
Yeah. Well, and here you are. And by the way, I don't know, can you see it? Yeah, that necklace that you have on, this barbershop necklace is pretty cool. What's it like? I mean, you said you wanted to cut the hair. You just didn't want to focus on one race. You're going to be able to cut everybody's hair.
Right.
I don't think there's a lot of people out there that are like that in terms of, a lot of times when you see an African-American barber, well, I only cut other, African-Americans, but that's not you wanted to be able to cut as much hair as you possibly could.
Right. Well, I mean, I had a good instructor. I'm going to say it. I had a good instructor that advised me that, of having an open mindset, I mean, white people got money just like black people. I mean, everybody has money. The key is to make money. It's not about, being comfortable. And so I'm definitely, I can't say I'm the only one. I'm the only one that I know of that I do what I do in Jonesboro, as far as all races, as in cutting any style of hair anyway. But it's definitely, it's not, cutting is not a challenge, the challenge is, like I said, just getting people in the shop, getting people comfortable, just because it's a black barber don't mean you're going to get a skin tight fade, I mean, I give you whatever you want, but yeah, I mean, that's, that's my biggest challenge.
And I'm assuming, there's some good conversations with you and your clients.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Great conversations. You get that's one thing I want to work. I never thought that I would own even when I worked at another barbershop, I remember when I started, I was like, I don't want my own barbershop because I don't want to run nothing. I'm not that, organized, responsible, I'm not that structured type of person. And so I was always like, I don't want to own my own shop, and and like I say, just in my life today, I mean, it happens to me all the time. you know, God has a plan for you that you don't plan for, you know. And so I don't know what gave me that urge of wanting to open my own shop, but I just, as time went on, I saw that people wasn't being real with me. People were uncomfortable. You know, I couldn't really, at the same time, I got to respect somebody else's business. And so there's some things that I want to keep, you know, business. You know, I don't want to bring politics and, you know, religion into conversations that's going to make other people uncomfortable, you know. And so it's a respect level at that. And so
so you're saying when it's just you, you could go into those uncomfortable conversations.
I can go deep into
and get personal.
Right. And the client will go into it. You know, no client is going to sit here and you know, they may be in the process of getting a divorce. No man with a pride, a real man with pride, is going to sit there and open up in front of just people. You know, somebody that's really hurting and that has a lot of pride. You know, some men will, some men don't care. You know, but some people, you know, if you're really damaged and stuff like that, that's gonna be personal. And so you don't want people that you don't even know or that you don't even talk to, you know, in your business. And so, I mean, that's understandable. You know, I wouldn't, you know, at the same time. Right. I mean, so I definitely wanted to have an environment, you know, whatever the conversation may be, you know, whether you divorce or you want to know about the Bible or you want to know about Buddhism or Muslim, whatever, you know. I wanted people to be able to talk about what they wanted to talk about. Yeah. Because I love conversation. I love to learn. I don't like to stay focused in just what you know, my thoughts, you know. I want to know other people's thoughts so I can understand better, you know.
Sounds like you care for your fellow
I care. I mean, I care about people in general, you know, no matter who you are, what you are, because I try, like I said, I always tell people, try to understand because of that person got there somehow. And so I think our goal is to try to understand that, you know, without judgment. And at the same time, I just think people lose their patience, you know, and I think that's a key to life. You know, God tells you to have patience, you know, so, you know, he works on his times, not ours. And so that's hard though. It's very challenging because, I mean, I've had, you know, conversations with, like I said, I've had a client, you know, he's an atheist, you know, I cut his hair for 3 years and I didn't know that, you know, the whole 3 years. And we just happened to have that one conversation to where, you know, things got opened up. And it was probably until this day, it's still one of the best conversations that I've had. You know, he's still one of my best humble clients that I've got, you know, even though he's atheist. You know, it's not about judgment, it's about understanding. And I understand why he is atheist. You know, I totally get it, you know. And if people would hear it, you know, they may understand it, you know. But yeah, man, I mean, it's just a blessing. I can't, you know, I don't worry about money. You know, I always tell people that, like, the money comes, you know, because God, he's never going to let me, he knows what I want to do with my time, my heart, and my money. I would rather bless people more. So, I mean, money comes, you know, and I can't explain that, you know, that's him. You know, I think if your heart's in the right place and you do the right thing, I'm not saying that I'm perfect. Far from it. Well, yeah. You know, I mean, I'm far from perfect.
It sounds like, Lionel, that not only do you enjoy cutting hair, providing a service, making money doing it, but you also, you know, want to know what's going on in your customers' life. Seems like your customers are also your friends, and you care about them and want to see them succeed as well. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to highlight your business and what you're doing, because I think you're doing great stuff, and I love your story. And I appreciate it. I love how, you know, how old are you, Lionel?
I'm 29.
You're 29 years old, and you own your own business. You've been doing this for 3 years?
I've been cutting hair, going on 4 years. I've been cutting hair going on 4 years.
Well, you know, they say, you know, if your business makes it 2 or 3 years, that's the, you know, the hardest time. So.
Yeah, they said in barber school, 3 years. If you can if you can get over that 3-year hump, you know, then you made it. You know, I've like I said, I mean, I've had my shop for a year and I'm blessed. You know, yeah. I mean, it's him, man. I can't explain it.
Well, hey, I appreciate you coming on the program.
Definitely.
And you've got a Facebook page, so it's Lionel's Cuts, and that's Cuts with a Z on the end of it.
Cuts with a Z.
But you can just search for your Facebook page, right? If you want.
Absolutely. You can just Google my Facebook page or just search on Facebook, Instagram. It's Lionel's _ Cuts with a Z, same thing. And I got plenty of pictures on there. Cut kids, I cut everything. Come see me.
All righty. Lionel Curry, everybody. It's Lionel's Cuts. We got to take a break. We'll be back in just a moment.
If you believe the Second Amendment protects your right to defend your home with a firearm, where do you turn if the government confiscates your gun? To the courthouse. The Founding Fathers created your Seventh Amendment right to a civil jury to protect your freedoms. The courthouse is where you fight the overreaching hand of government. And the Brad Hendricks Law Firm is where the fight starts. Call the Brad Hendricks Law Firm at 501-221-0444. The Brad Hendricks Law Firm in Little Rock, standing ready using the Seventh Amendment to protect your Second Amendment rights.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Or we're caught unawares, we really don't have a really good chance against our assailant. So, if you have a firearm and you know how to use it, then that could be the difference between life and death for a female. I will say this: my husband and I took a concealed carry. Excuse me. We took a defensive pistol class this past weekend at Jan Morgan's range. And my eyes were open. I mean, I knew that there was problems with violence against women, but she had a couple of audio clips from a 911 call. And, Hollywood kind of gives that idea, well, if you call 911, they're going to keep you on the phone, and they're going to talk you through what you need to do, and the police are going to be there, and they're going to save the day. That's not necessarily true at all times, because in this one clip,
determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. We got a great show, the rest of the show for you, as well as what we've already gone through. We got the Conduit Fraction Review Quiz coming up. Got I guess kind of a potpourri of questions from previous quizzes that Joe's going to have to answer. We'll see if he can retain some of this information, see if it's true learning or if it's just memorization and then he's forgetting it to move on. He gets the grade and then he moves on. That's how I did class when I was going through school, for sure. Retention was not my biggest plus there. We also have Chris Ann Hall coming up at 7:33, constitutional advocate, syndicated radio host. She's always great to talk to. I want to talk to her about one of the things she teaches is the 700-year history, the genealogy of the Constitution, 700-year history in the 5 foundational documents that are the very roots of American liberty. I want to talk about that. Also, I want to ask her if Donald Trump really does have to respond to that subpoena that may be coming from the Mueller investigation in terms of what Article 2 of the United States Constitution has to say about that. Very interested in that. So we got all that coming up next, as well as I'm going to talk about how the governor's now supporting red flag laws after the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette urged him to. Amazon is planning a distribution center for Arkansas. Now, it's not one of the giant ones. It's like a pared down distribution center. They want to come to North Little Rock. It's going to be like a 30,000 to 40,000 square foot building. Normally, their massive distribution centers are 800,000 plus square feet. And so the idea here is, they're hoping that eventually maybe Amazon wants to expand to a full 800,000 plus square feet facility. But for now, this is a test program, kind of a pilot program, where they are trying to figure out, 30,000 to 40, maybe we can have smaller distribution centers instead of these larger distribution centers, and let's see what happens. Now, my immediate thought was this. If the distribution center is now in Arkansas, then Amazon has a physical presence, right? I mean, I know Amazon is already remitting these sales taxes voluntarily before Arkansas passes a law that they're now going to go through and pass because the Supreme Court says that somebody in Illinois has to understand and comply with the tax law in Arkansas and the other 49 states. It's, this whole thing, we need to talk about this for a second, though. In the context of all that, I just want you to know where this is heading. The Supreme Court's decision that says that a sovereign state, a citizen of a sovereign state, has to pay another state they don't even live in's taxes for streets and fire and trash and police and all this other stuff, it's going to become a nightmare. It's going to be a mess. It's going to hurt small business for sure, but meaning internet small businesses and everything else. But it's going to be so convoluted and such a mess that Congress is going to be forced to act. They're going to have to do this, and what we're going to end up having is a national sales tax. Now, in the past, before the internet, if you would have said something about a national sales tax, there would have been a complete revolt. But this may very well have set the stage to expand government even more and have a national sales tax, but one that's on the internet where a portion of it goes to the states and another portion of it goes to the federal government. I mean, you mark my words. Whatever the federal government will get something for administrating it, and it'll be some sort of percentage. I'm just telling you, it's only a matter of time. This is going to be a nightmare. I mean, can you imagine being a small business owner having to comply with not only your state tax laws, but 49 other states? Oh, there'll be software, though. There'll be software that'll do it for you. Well, how expensive is that going to be? Will it work? It's going to create a situation where Congress is going to want to act, and they're going to create a national sales tax. That is where we're headed. And I think it's absolutely a tragedy because it'll be one more tributary of taxpayer money to fund government. The only way to shrink government or to keep it the same size is to limit the amount of money we send there. And we give them a ton of our money already. We already give money for them to do the things they're supposed to be doing, and they mismanage it. They spend it. They waste it. They create new responsibilities for themselves to take care of us, while abdicating basic responsibilities like national defense and securing our borders. Enough's enough. But hey, you know what? I believe in less taxes. I believe in lower taxes. I believe in relieving the tax burden that's on not just Arkansans, but all Americans right now. President Donald Trump has demonstrated once again that lower taxes is a good thing and actually helps people. And in order to do that, though, what you know what you have to do? You have to reject this class warfare mindset that we were all subjected to for the 8 years of President Barack Obama. We got to take a break. We got one more hour coming your way next. Don't go anywhere.
Talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
This woman literally, and they had a countdown, she literally had a minute and 30 seconds before she and her young child were murdered. And she didn't have any way to protect herself.
Wow.
Now, if she had a firearm and she was, trained to know how to use it, she could have stood a chance against this assailant. And then another woman, she was at home. She had recently injured her foot. She was kind of confined to her couch. She heard her dog barking and realized that somebody was in the house. And she called 911, and they kept her on the phone and kept her oriented, and she gave them updates. And the guy came in, and it literally, when the police finally got there, he was attacking her as they got there, and it took 5 men to get him subdued.
Oh, he was on drugs, I assume.
Well, I can't remember the ins and outs of it, but yeah, we don't just, the drugs that are out there on the street now, they're laced with things. They're people could be, I don't know if you remember that, the bath salts, the people, it would take multiple gunshots and tasers and just different ways to get this person down, and it took 5 men to subdue this 5 police officers to subdue this attacker. And in those 2 instances, hindsight's 20/20, but if they had had a firearm and were trained to use it, they may have stood a chance, and that the lady and her baby would have still been alive, and this lady would have been assaulted.
Yeah.
So yeah, the firearms are the great equalizer for women, and like I said before, it's not just owning a firearm and being able to know how to use it is not it's not a right wing issue. It transcends party lines. I mean, if you're in our history, we didn't have parties when we started. We were just Americans, and now people think that, oh well. And that's the other thing I want to bring up. I mean, Patriots of Act 746 it's nonpartisan. You can be a Democrat, you can be a Republican, you can be a Libertarian, you can be of no affiliation, and you're welcome because the common bond that brings us together is our Second Amendment right.
The human right, the human right of self-defense. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, and you just go ahead.
I was just going to say that, in the Declaration of Independence, it says, that we have our inalienable rights are the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, and some people will say property, but our inalienable right to life. That's God-given. That is not government-given. And you have the right to defend yourself. And then you have the right to have a firearm because ultimately, we have self-preservation, but we also have our ability to defend ourselves against a tyrannical government, which we obviously have that issue at this day and time. We've got, I told you that, my eyes were open when I joined Patriots of Act 746. I found out about the primary campaigns. I also found you. I didn't know you existed. I've lived here for 10 years, and I did not know the Paul Harrell program existed. And I found out about your show, and I started watching that. I'm on Facebook Live most mornings, and I interact with people in the thread, and I learned so much. I did not realize. I knew our federal government was corrupt, but I had no idea that our state government was equally corrupt. If not, I would contend that it's about as bad, if not worse, than our federal government.
Yeah, it's not as there are not as many people involved, but because it's obviously smaller. But I feel like per capita, way less people know about what goes on in Little Rock. So that almost makes it worse because there's just not enough reporting on it. I mean, at least we have a lot more national coverage about how bad D.C. is, but you don't really have that with how bad the
No,
the
you
swamp in
don't,
Little
and
Rock
you're not
is.
going to, and you're not going to hear that on our local, affiliates hardly ever. I mean, I was surprised. I want to put a plug in for our friend Kenny Wallace for helping us out and going down to Little Rock and setting up shop and cueing us into what these committees are doing, and that begs the question: when are we finally going to have this transparency that they keep touting? We have had citizen journalists go down there.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is hour number 2. Welcome to the program. Thanks so much for being with us on this Thursday. It's the intersection of conservative ideas and reality, where we are building a liberty machine. Thank you so much for being with us. John Moritz with this story. I've got it on the Northwest Arkansas Democrat Gazette page, but it's also over on the new improved website, Arkansas Online website. Headline, Governor open to red flag law on guns. Seizures in threatening situations would need to adhere to due process, he says. Now, this is on the heels of the Arkansas Democrat Gazette Sunday front page, I believe. Essentially, their headline, well, I will interpret it for you. I will paraphrase the headline. Guns kill. That should have been the headline. That's what they were going for. Guns kill. The newspaper, this is from today's piece, the newspaper examined several model laws that were touted by researchers and advocates and enacted in states that have lower rates of gun violence. So they're saying Arkansas has a terrible gun violence rate. We need to look at where this is happening. Is it happening more in liberal-controlled areas? I mean, is the gun violence really, let's just be honest, is it happening in Little Rock? Is that where the gun violence is? Or is it happening in cities that are controlled by Democrats here in Arkansas? Honest question. I look at Chicago, and I see how the Democrat Party has failed Chicago. It's one of the most violent places in the country. People are murdered all the time with guns there. I would imagine Chicago, I don't know this. I am just speculating. I would imagine Chicago has red flag laws. Do they not? They certainly have the left's dream utopia when it comes to gun control. So the Democrat Gazette runs this story on Sunday, and lo and behold, Governor Asa Hutchinson comes out and says he supports it. He supports red flag laws. Someone tell me the difference between Jared Henderson, the Democrat running for governor, and Asa. I honestly, somebody tell me what the difference is. I mean, I just can't wait to hear, we need common sense gun control. We need common sense gun laws. That's what he's going to say. Red flag laws are common sense. Common sense gun laws. This from the guy who believes that the Second Amendment is a privilege and not a right. And when called on the carpet on it, Governor Asa Hutchinson said, well, rights and privileges are the same thing. No, they're not, Governor. They're two different things. So Governor Hutchinson was asked to respond to the Democrat Gazette's article on guns that was designed to elicit an emotional reaction to try to get support for some Arkansans to take away the rights of their neighbors, the human right of self-defense. Hutchinson, a Republican, said entering state-level information into a federal background check system and helping federal authorities crack down on felons in possession of weapons are two practices that could have a positive impact on gun violence. He singled out as a possible solution so-called red flag laws or temporary orders for the confiscation of guns from at-risk people. Now, he insists that there would have to be due process. It has to be accompanied by due process. It has to be because you're dealing with constitutional rights and liberties. It's fair to look at it. That could be a debate in the next session of the legislature. Here we go. The governor's saying, okay, let's debate whether or not we need to have the possible confiscation of firearms, but we'll have due process, trust us. Of course, who's leading the charge on the red flag laws in the Arkansas legislature? Yeah, Democrats. Representative Greg Leding of Fayetteville, Senator Will Bond of Little Rock. They've already drafted the red flag laws in the proposal. So that's what's going on here. Pretty interesting, right? Now, Senator Trent Gardner is quoted as saying he strongly disagrees with the legislation that Democrats Will Bond and Greg Leding have proposed. Well, good for him. I wonder what the other Republicans will do. At some point, the Republican Party, you guys have got to stop taking for granted your supporters out there. And I think you are in a big way. I really do. Of course, Moms Demand Action, the radical anti-Second Amendment group, of course, they're in support of this. In a statement Wednesday, Hutchinson's Democratic opponent in the November election, Jared Henderson of Little Rock, said he was deeply concerned about gun violence in Arkansas and that solutions are needed from both major political parties. Quote, we can protect our children and loved ones from gun violence, and if elected, I would encourage bipartisan discussion that holds true to Arkansas values and keeps our families safe. And so what we're essentially saying here is, you know what, we need to have more of an assumption of guilt if you want a gun than innocence. And we need more and more people relying on the government to make them safe, personally safe, than giving them that right themselves. Now, I know we're not totally there. It's not as black and white as that, but those are the two competing issues here, really. Second Amendment aside, your human right to self-defense aside, it's essentially we have a lot of people who are terrified of guns. They think that they're sentient beings. They think that guns are floating around right now, and the guns are deciding right now who are they going to kill next. No mention, by the way, that Chicago is the utopia for gun control, and yet people still have guns. How is that possible? People are still getting guns illegally. They're still killing people. Do you know murder is illegal and people are still murdering? Oh, my goodness. Murder is illegal and people still murder. You know, there's no logic here. It's an absence of recognizing what we're really facing here when it comes to our Second Amendment and the irrational left that thinks with pieces of paper they can somehow correct the corruption of the human heart and the evil in the human heart. It is maddening. But, hey, you know what? The governor did exactly what the left wanted him to do. Let's put a newspaper article talking about gun violence and how bad Arkansas is, and now we have the governor running for re-election, and what does he do? He pivots towards his opponents. And he always does this. He always pivots towards his opponents. There is no way, if we were back in February and the governor still was running against Jan Morgan in a primary, he would ever come out with a statement like this. And you and I both know it, don't we? We know he would, in a Republican primary, he would have never come out and said he supports red flag laws. But he does now. Whew, unbelievable. And on a different note, Joe, I think you're up, buddy. That's right. It's time for the weekly Conduit for Action quiz. Always fun to do this. This is a review quiz. We're going to highlight major questions from quizzes from the past week Because knowledge is power, and one of the best ways to retain knowledge is through repetition. This quiz will not be on one topic, but instead a retest of the knowledge learned from previous quizzes. So, Joe, are you ready, sir? Oh, good to see you back on screen.
I guess I'm ready.
You look like you're really enthusiastic this morning.
I'm really tired.
Yeah?
I tried, like, that thunderstorm that rolled through last night kept me awake.
Yeah, and then the melatonin, right? You had a melatonin.
Yeah, that's supposed to help you sleep.
It's supposed to help you sleep, but if you don't sleep, if you take a melatonin and for some reason can't sleep after that, I have found that it's, it's actually miserable.
Yeah.
It's a miserable night's sleep. Okay, here we go. Question number 1, Joe. In the re-quiz, we're going to see. I hope you make 100 on this. I really do. How much did taxpayers spend in total on Arkansas Medicaid beneficiaries, both traditional Medicaid and Medicaid expansion, for fiscal year 2018? Was it $2.4 billion, $3.7 billion, or $7.1 billion? What do you think? I mean, you've had the question before. I remember it.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember because
I remember it.
If I remember it. Trying to remember.
I'm going to need an answer. I bet our audience knows it. Audience, don't help him. Facebook audience, do not help him.
I don't have Facebook up.
2.1, 3.7, 7.1.
2.4, not 2.1.
Whatever, whatever. Just pick one. And that sound right there. We're going to need an answer, Joe. We're going to need an answer. Got to keep this thing moving. What do you think? He's going with $7.1 billion. Question number 2.
Yeah.
What was the purpose of the $275,000 that Ben E. Keith Foods in North Little Rock received from Governor Asa Hutchinson's Quick Action Closing Fund?
This one I remember.
Was it a parking lot?
I got
was
it wrong.
Job training, or was it energy efficiency improvements?
It's parking lot paving because I put energy efficiency last time.
Okay.
I got it wrong.
Parking lot paving. Question number 3. How much did taxpayers spend in fiscal year 2018 on Medicaid expansion, the Obamacare welfare program called Arkansas Works? Was it $800 million? Was it $1.2 billion or $1.9 billion? A, B, or C?
It's 1.9.
$1.9 billion. Okay, knocking these down pretty quickly. Number 4, how much did the American Taekwondo Association receive from Governor Asa Hutchinson's Quick Action Closing Fund for a new headquarters in Little Rock? Now, I affectionately
pretty sure I
say
got this one wrong.
It's a dojo. Did they get $25,000 for the dojo? Did they get $250,000 for the dojo, or did they get $950,000 for a new dojo?
It's $950,000 because the last time I did this, I thought it was $250,000. I don't know why $250,000 stuck out in my head.
So you're going with $950,000. All right.
Yeah.
Question 5. Currently, what is the total number of years that a person may serve in the General Assembly in either the House or the Senate? Is it 8 total years, 12 total years, or 16 total years?
16.
16 years.
It's being lowered to 10.
Question number 6. After a net decrease of around 53,000 people, falling from 340,000 enrollees in 2017 to 287,000 enrollees as of June 30th, 2018, did spending on Medicaid expansion Arkansas Works program increase or decrease?
This one is also one I got wrong last time, and I remember specifically because I told myself, how dare I use logic in this scenario? So it's going to be increase, not decrease.
Increase. Question number 7. Yeah, I mean, you are talking about the government here, so the whole concept of the government in many regards, once you get past the initial idea that you have to have something, is illogical. Under the proposed term limits constitutional amendment that will appear on the ballot as issue 3, how long may a politician serve in total in the General Assembly, House and Senate? Is it 6 years, 10 years, or 22 years?
10 years.
10 years. Question number 8. May persons in the United States freely associate together and spend their money engaging in issue advocacy and other free speech? Yes, freedom of speech and freedom of association are protected by the First Amendment, or no, the government can force groups to disclose members and donors of private organizations who associate together.
The answer is yes.
Yes. Question 9. May a 501c4 nonprofit organization spend unlimited money with no financial disclosure to advocate for the election or defeat of a candidate for office? No. These nonprofits may not advocate for the election or defeat of a candidate. They may engage in issue speech and or educational speech. Or yes, dark money is rampant and these groups can spend billions to buy up politicians.
Dark money. But the answer is no.
Okay. Going with no. Going with the first one. Question 10. How much did Arkansas state government bring in from gross tax collections for fiscal year 2018? Was it $3.5 billion, $5.8 billion, or $6.7 billion?
$6.7 billion.
Going with C there. Question 11. Because Arkansas brought in record revenue for fiscal year 2018, how much did Arkansas return to the taxpayer? Did they give us $27 million back, $7 million back, or $0?
I'm going to go 0.
Going with 0.
I think I got that one wrong last time for some reason.
What is the tax rate on health insurance premiums in Arkansas? In other words, how much tax does Arkansas collect on the premiums it pays insurance companies taxing taxpayer money? Is it 0.5%, 1.25%, or 2.5%?
2.5.
2.5%. For the privilege of doing business in the state of Arkansas. Question 13, subscribe for Conduit for Action emails if you don't. If you haven't already, what town do you live? And Joe, whenever you're ready, man, hit that done button. Let's see what score you got.
One.
Let's see.
Yeah,
91.7%.
No, it was parking lot paving. It was. I swear it was.
No, I think you got it wrong, man.
No,
it was energy efficiency improvements.
I promise you, that's what I put last time. I got it wrong.
I bet you put parking lot paving last time.
No, I swear it was.
It's a conspiracy.
What?
It's a conspiracy, Joe. It's a conspiracy. So you get one question wrong. He got wrong. What was the purpose of the, now he's trying to prove himself right. What was the purpose of the $275,000 that Benny Keith Foods in North Little Rock received from Governor Asa Hutchinson's Quick Action Closing Fund? Joe marked for a parking lot being paved. The correct answer is energy efficiency improvements. Joe is essentially acting like the Democrats now who can't accept the election of Donald Trump. You can see he's trying to research now. We can see you. I'm aware. He's trying to research now. I mean, gosh, why don't you just, you know what you need? You need a special counsel to investigate why you got this question wrong. We need like Robert Mueller or somebody to investigate all of this.
No, okay. I'll do the research myself.
Okay, you do the research yourself?
This way
you need to accept, you know, we used to make you take a pledge before every time you took this quiz that you would accept the results.
Yeah, you haven't done it in a while.
That's true. All right, well, let's go to break. You can research and figure out that I think you are wrong.
I don't care. Whatever. I'm done. I could have swore the last time it was.
Honestly,
it was last time, and it was parking lot because I thought it was something really dumb.
When you said that, I was on your page. I thought you were going to make 100, honestly, because
Yeah, that was not the one I thought I was going to miss.
But anyway. Okay, folks, we're going to take a break. We got a great show, rest of the show for you. We got Chris Ann Hall coming up at the bottom of this hour. We're going to talk to her about a bunch of stuff. Don't go anywhere. Back in just a moment.
Out and going down to Little Rock and setting up shop and cueing us into what these committees are doing. And that, begs the question, when are we finally going to have this transparency that they keep touting? We have to have citizen journalists go down there and set up shop to tell us what they're doing to us. And I think yesterday the tax bars got together, and I haven't got to go back. I had a busy day yesterday. I need to go back and watch the recordings. But they met today. They met yesterday to talk about how they're going to spend more of your money and not cut taxes and spend more of your money.
Well, we'll have coverage. We'll have the coverage of that. It's at 7 because there is an article.
I don't want to steal your thunder.
No, it's fine. No, it's not a big deal. They did propose some income tax reductions and things like that. I'm gonna get into that.
In a world full of constituents with social media accounts, bloggers just looking to increase their page views, and a talk radio host who generally is just the worst. How are Little Rock's elite supposed to conduct business with such a lack of privacy? Introducing the 1835 Club, older and more refined than other clubs that claim discretion. The 1835 Club is for seasoned political veterans that want to conduct the highest form of aristocratic business with the public's money. Are you a schemer? Do you someday want a guaranteed flow of taxpayer money to support your business? Is it your dream to see the .gov domain at the end of your business website? Don't listen to the imitators. The 1835 Club is the place where corrupt politicians and businessmen hatch their next crony schemes. At the 1835 Club, we make lobbying safe and legal. Ethics. Why, of course. All business is done in an ethical manner. Just look for the sign above the door that reads, loophole. Are you tired of the Capitol Police restricting your access to the roof after a perfectly good night of drinking? The 1835 Club has libations and a perfectly good roof. Other crony clubs that promise discretion try to lure you in by advertising bars made out of aeroplanes. Well, at the 1835 Club, instead of an airplane fuselage, we've got a space shuttle. No, not a bar. We've got an actual space shuttle that makes a daily run to the moon so members of the 1835 Club can have some real privacy away from the bloggers and taxpayers. Are you an Arkansas aristocrat? Do you want to be? It's the 1835 Club, and we work tirelessly to make sure the good old boy system remains alive and well. Join today.
Disclaimer. The 1835 Club reserves the right to deny membership to anyone who has principles. Any talk of the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution must be done in jest or, at the very least, with a condescending tone. And finally, the 1835 Club will be given a 25% commission of any agreements made between politicians and the business community.
PHP Parody.
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
I want to remind you, some of the breaking news on China is that they have decided to come back to the negotiating table. The Chinese delegation, a Chinese delegation, according to China's Ministry of Commerce, they said that they are coming to the United States in late August, so later this month, to try to negotiate again with the Trump administration on these tariffs. That, ladies and gentlemen, is how you negotiate. Now, the United States, which has the best market in the world, a market that everybody wants access to, President Trump will be negotiating from a place of strength. That's how you negotiate from where I'm sitting. I don't know what's going to happen, but it's interesting that negotiations are now back on, isn't it? We have China recently condemning the United States Defense Act, the National Defense Authorization Act that was signed by the president on Monday, $716 billion in military spending. China doesn't like it because they think there's a specific part of the National Defense Authorization Act that is targeting them. The act identifies, quote, long-term strategic competition with China as a principal priority for the United States while committing to support a self-sufficient Taiwan free from Beijing's interference. Now, that's going to make China pretty upset. Chinese officials reacted with particular anger to the strengthening of the Committee on Foreign Investment, which reviews all major foreign investments to determine whether they present a national security threat, claiming the measure was targeting China. Specifically, in cases, it could be that it's targeting China's investment in states like Arkansas. That now, because of this influx of cash, the Committee on Foreign Investment will take a closer look at what's going on in Arkadelphia and determine if there are any national security threats. I will remind you again that I don't believe this Chinese investment in Arkansas is benign. The FBI has investigations in all 50 states into the Chinese activities in this country. They steal $600 billion in intellectual property every year. There's a 100-year plan to supplant the United States and become the #1 country in the world. There were 2 men 3 weeks ago who were indicted for stealing Arkansas rice technology. They were Chinese nationals. Folks, this is serious. Why is Arkansas's chief economic development strategy, the flagship economic development strategy, doing business with the communist Chinese? It doesn't make sense, especially when we are in a trade war with them right now. Why would we make those companies and, in turn, the country of China rich? Not in our best interest. There's 3 different options, and they definitely... The question is, I think they are on a revenue-neutral course. They may have a tax cut that's a reduction in revenue, but, they've got to look at ending this exemption here and there so that they basically attempt to have a wash of kind of a shell game. We'll talk about that at 5. At 7. Hey, Amy, I want to know, though, you guys, the Northeast Arkansas chapter of Patriots VAC 746, you guys have a meeting coming up on Saturday. Is that right?
We do. It's going to be held in Batesville at the Colton Steakhouse there on St. Louis Street, and it starts at 2:30. I would encourage, even though the official start time is 2:30, I learned the hard way that when you get there on time, you've already... the meeting's just about to begin, and you might want to show up a little earlier to fellowship and maybe have a bite to eat. We're having a meeting the Northeast, and we rotate. We don't just have them in Batesville. In fact, the last 2 meetings where I attended, I went to Jonesboro to Tamales, and I went last month was in Pocahontas. And the neat thing about 746, we reach out to our local law enforcement and our local politicians and legislators. We try to have, we've invited the sheriff, and we invited the chief of police, and then of course their deputies and their sergeants. And I intend to invite. I've went around and I've put flyers out. This is the first time we've had a meeting here, so. There's probably not too many people in my area that know about the group, so I've been passing out business cards and putting up flyers, and we're going to have that meeting. And so if you live in this area, if you in Independence County, or even in the surrounding counties that we're talking about, Craighead County and Randolph and Sharp and Jackson and even White County, or even if you want to come from somewhere further away, we would love to have you, because, like I said, it's all about educating the citizen about what their rights are in the state of Arkansas.
And I want to add to that the fact that y'all, invite the local officials, sheriffs, politicians, state reps, and everything else. This, ladies and gentlemen, what you are hearing is the work of a grassroots organization, and taking the time, having these meetings, educating the officials, having this relationship. And it's all done in this particular context of protecting your human right to self-defense. And if your law enforcement knows and is educated about what the law is, everybody is more free. And that is what you guys are doing. And I really appreciate it. I think it's great work. And Amy Freeman, it's great to have you on the program this morning.
Great to have.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, good morning to you. Welcome back to the program. Thanks so much. Folks, she's an attorney. She's a former prosecutor. She was fired after teaching the Constitution to Tea Party groups, and she would not sacrifice liberty for a paycheck. She's a disabled veteran of the United States Army, a Russian linguist, a mother, a pastor's wife, and a patriot. Please welcome back to the program. We have Chris Ann Hall back with us. Chris Ann, thanks so much. Good morning to you.
Good morning to you. Thank you so much for having me back on the air. I'm excited.
Me too. I'm very excited as well. And the interview that we did, I think about a month ago, all of our audience just really loved it. A lot of them Chris Ann, by the way, not only do they listen to this program, they also listen to your syndicated radio program as well, and they love how you stand for constitutional principles. And so they certainly wanted to get you back on the program, and so did I. So I'm glad that you're here.
Well, great. I'm excited. Lots of stuff going on, man.
Yeah, there is. There's a ton of stuff, and I want to get a couple of current event questions here in a minute. But one of the things on your website really stuck out to me as I was kind of doing a little research for this interview, where it talks about how you are able to teach the genealogy of the Constitution, and it says here a 700-year history and 5 foundational documents that are the very roots of American liberty. I mean, we may not have time to get into all of that, but 700 years. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, there's a taught misconception in America that the Constitution is an invention of the men who wrote the document, as if they sat down in 1787 and said, hey, let's do this thing. It's really an evolution of British law, which sounds a little bit strange considering we don't teach accurate American history anymore. But we have to remember, all those people that we think about as being the founders of America, George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, James Madison, none of them were Americans. As a matter of fact, there were no Americans until July 2nd, 1776. So what we have are people who were all British citizens. They were educated in the rights of Englishmen and the laws of Great Britain and the natural laws that is consistent with the security of life, liberty, and property of every individual. And so what happens then is you study that history and you learn why we are a constitutional republic and not the Kingdom of America. Because many people who are my age or a little bit older probably remember in school that there were people begging George Washington to be king. So we got to remember that we were very close to being the Kingdom of America, but there was a wisdom in history and experience that taught those who not only influenced but who created our constitutional republic that said, hey, wait a minute, we have a single goal in mind. The single goal is the lead-off to the Declaration of Independence. It is established in the preamble to the Constitution. It's the whole purpose for the Bill of Rights. And that single goal was to preserve the blessings of liberty, not just to ourselves, but to our posterity. And they said, with that single goal in mind, we realize we cannot be a kingdom, we cannot be a democracy, we must be a constitutional republic. And so what we teach in that genealogy of the Constitution, the history of the Constitution, is that 700 years of life and government experience that is the history of our founders' heritage, that says, hey, we must be a constitutional republic to preserve liberty. And most people, it's kind of funny because not only are Americans taught that the Constitution erroneously is a living, breathing document, meaning, it doesn't mean what it says and it doesn't mean what it was intended to say, but the British people are also taught that their Constitution is living, breathing, only they tell them it's not in writing, which is pretty much the same thing. But the truth is the British history establishes their Constitution to be written in 5 documents. And if you like, I'll just name them real quick.
Yeah, that would be great. Please do.
Well, they start with the 1100 Charter of Liberties. The second document is the Magna Carta. The third is the Petition of Right of 1628. The fourth document is the Grand Remonstrance of 1641. And the fifth document is the English Bill of Rights of 1689. And this is the building of the rights of all Englishmen. And it's the same liberty and guaranteed liberty that our founders brought to America as English colonists.
So it's their rights as Englishmen, and they, I guess, what do they eventually say? Well, these rights don't go far enough because they're administered. They come from a king that can take those rights away when it's convenient. I mean, was that some of their thinking? And also, using like a 700-year, reference point. I imagine they were also looking at some of the colossal failures of people and civilizations attempting to govern themselves.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They went to the wisdom of many governments in history, but the reason we teach this 700 years is because this is a direct written history, and these 5 documents actually create our Declaration of Independence, our Constitution, our Bill of Rights. So not only are the principles of our foundational documents pulled from these 5 documents, sometimes even the very language themselves are pulled from them. As a matter of fact, the Declaration of Independence is a legal requirement that comes from Clause 61 of the Magna Carta. It wasn't some kind of an invention of our founders. It was the requirement of all Englishmen, according to Clause 61 of the Magna Carta, to petition the government for a redress of grievances, to give them 40 days to comply and redress those grievances, and if the king and the crown refuses to redress the grievances within 40 days, the Magna Carta said that the people, with their local government, have the authority to assail the king in the court with all power necessary to make themselves whole. So the Declaration of Independence was a requirement and could not even existed without these documents. The 1100 Charter of Liberty actually establishes in writing that government can't do whatever it wants, and that there are limits to government, and that if government engages in certain activities, then government is evil and oppressive, and the people are righteously justified to resist those efforts of government. It's amazing because in the 1100 Charter of Liberties, which is written by a king, the king promises states will never have to pay the government before they receive their inheritance. Because if the heirs of an estate have to pay for their inheritance from the government before they receive it, he said, you have an evil and oppressive government. But yet here we have today, that should sound familiar, everybody, as inheritance tax or death tax. Mm-hmm. We have our government today charging inheritance tax or death tax, which in 1100 was earmarked as the efforts of an evil and oppressive government, but we allow our government to call it revenue. And I believe, and that's why we teach this history, that we have been failing. Through the failure of teaching this history, we've allowed government to engage in activity that would be classified throughout history as evil and oppressive because we've been taught the wrong things for a very long time.
Wow. Now that's just a ton of truth right there. You can feel it, ladies and gentlemen. That is incredible. And it really should make us all cherish what liberties we have left, because it seems to me like if we have forgotten so much of the truths that our ancestors knew, right? And yet, we are where we are today, and kind of should reinforce the severity of how serious this is. If we don't stand up for liberty now, the next generation, to reinvent the wheel, to rediscover these truths, it doesn't just happen automatically. It takes toil. It takes the diligence to secure these liberties. And so to me, it really just says, hey, we really have to get our stuff together, quite honestly, Chris Ann.
Yeah, well, it's really, really, it is the basic foundation for everything that I teach. We have LibertyFirstUniversity.com, which is our online training education, constitutional American history, civic government training. And it is the first course that everybody has to take at Liberty First University because it is the foundation for everything. And frankly, it is a very, very stunning course because I've been teaching this for nearly a decade now, and people are shocked at how often history was repeated exactly. Mark Twain said history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. He was wrong. He was simply wrong, because history does repeat, and it does repeat very, very precisely. The only thing that changes are the names and the dates. And this history class, the genealogy of the Constitution, I mean, I've had people throughout the years. I've had people with PhDs in American history, civics, PhDs in political science. I even had a Supreme Court justice in Texas tell me he learned more from me in 1 hour of that class than he learned in his entire education.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. What a rebuke of, these institutions that we are, you have to go here if you want to be somebody. You have to get a little certificate of paper from, this law school or that law school, and yet we're not teaching the, a lot of times, and you're an attorney, so I mean, law schools are teaching court precedent and jurisprudence more than they're teaching about individual rights. Is that correct?
No, we don't teach the Constitution in law schools anymore. It hasn't been taught in law schools. You can ask any lawyer who has graduated in the last 20 years, maybe even more. We haven't taught the Constitution in law schools for a very long time. I graduated from the University of Florida, had 300 in my graduating class, and 90% of them will tell you they never even had to look at the Constitution during their education.
Wow.
We teach what you mentioned, precedent, which we teach constitutional law, not the Constitution, which some people are like would be the same thing. Yeah, it should be the same thing, but it's not. What we teach are what we teach our law students, who will be future judges and lawyers, is that they know more about the Constitution than the history and the men who wrote it. And, after all, they're a bunch of dead guys who didn't have cell phones, so what could they possibly know?
That's exactly right. I have a family member, my sister, who is an attorney, and she told me when she was in law school that one of the professors admitted to her that, look, technically all of these bureaucracies that the federal government has are completely unconstitutional. They violate the non-delegation clause, Article 1, Section 1. And yet they just say, but we just have to have these bureaucracies because we're just so big and we have to be able to manage our government. And so, every now and then you just get those admissions, like, look, yeah, this is illegal, but and if you are teaching law students from that position, then they're going to think that the document is malleable.
Right, exactly. And what part of what we teach, everything at Liberty First University is taught from original source documents. So I don't take somebody else's interpretation of history. I don't teach what the Supreme Court or the law schools or even our colleges teach in error. What we do is a survey of the writings of the founders and their references to history to teach what the Constitution really is supposed to mean. The irony is we don't teach this, so this may sound a bit strange to some people who are listening, but the Constitution is a contract. It was written to be a contract with the intent of a contract, but a special kind of contract called a compact, which is an agreement between not people but sovereign governments, and in this case, our state. And our founders, knowing that it was a contract, fully expected the courts to enforce the Constitution like a contract. And the very first principle of contract law, every lawyer will have to admit, is a principle called the meeting of the minds, which means the meaning of the contract first comes from the drafters of the contract. And that contracts are not living, breathing documents, but documents written with the intent and the tenor of those who drafted them and those who signed them into law. And that's what we've lost. This idea that the Constitution is a living, breathing document never survives in contract law. I mean, seriously, can you go ask your law professor, your dean of your law school, or your politician, if they would allow their employment contract to be a living, breathing document? they would think you're nuts, and yet they want the supreme contract of America to be living, breathing. And so we have to, that's why what we do at LibertyFirstUniversity.com is so important, because what we do is reestablish to the Americans what our document means. And by reestablishing what our document means, we put the power back in the people's hands to control the federal government the way it was supposed to be controlled, and not just simply through elections.
It's so well said. I have one question on current events, and then I know you have to run,
Okay.
and we're running short on time too. But I've so enjoyed this educational segment. I know our listeners have too. So Article 2, the executive branch. We're hearing a lot about President Donald Trump potentially facing a subpoena to appear or be interviewed by Robert Mueller. But yet we have Donald Trump's lawyers, Jay Sekulow, Rudy Giuliani. They're saying, look, he's the president of the United States. We'll take this all the way to the Supreme Court. He doesn't have to comply with a subpoena. What are your thoughts on the powers of the president in this context, Chris Ann Hall?
Well, what we're talking about here again is the difference between what the Constitution says and what precedent says. Okay, so in studying Article 2 and the power of the president, we learn very clearly that the power of the president is very small on purpose. And the reason the power of the president is small, because they didn't want to establish a king. Many of those who were the founders and the creators of our Constitution were very concerned that by creating an executive branch who had a single person as the head of that executive branch, that over time that person would be able to collect power and become a king. So that's the first principle we need to understand when we're dealing with presidential power. What is the enumerated limited authority of the president, and what is the purpose of that power that is delegated? And so what the president's attorneys are talking about is precedent. There is no limitation in the Constitution for the President of the United States to not be subpoenaed. So will the Supreme Court uphold the precedent that the President can't be subpoenaed? Who knows? But the President is a civil officer, just like every other civil officer in the federal government. And to establish that the President cannot be subpoenaed would be to do exactly opposite of what our founders intended, that he and placed him in the realm of being above the law, or maybe even being very kingly. Now, the thing that we need to remember, that as an individual, as a president, even though he may be subpoenaed, he is not required to testify, because remember, the allegations are against him. And so he has the authority to say, you know what, I'm not going to testify because I'm not going to say anything that may or may not inadvertently indict myself. So I have the right to refuse to testify. And for me, if I was his attorney, I would give him that advice, because this subpoena is just ridiculous. Nobody is looking to get information from Donald Trump. They're looking to trap him into perjury because they have absolutely no credible charge against him at this time. So if you look at these hearings that have been happening, we realize that in these hearings, nobody's actually being charged with the purpose of the investigation. They're being charged with things that are simply not even related to the investigation, so that they can say that they have some kind of case and they have some kind of charges pending. So I firmly believe that if I were the president's counsel, I would say, look, you can be subpoenaed. We can't shield you from the subpoena, but you certainly should never testify, because all they're going to do is Donald Trump could go up there and be completely truthful and never lie, and all they would have to do is bring somebody and say, well, Donald Trump told me something else, and then the next thing you know, he's charged with perjury.
Yeah.
And the perjury charge would probably never go to court, right? But he would be tried in the court of public opinion, which is more powerful than true due process anyway.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I Really appreciate that perspective all around. Chris Ann Hall, it's always great to have you on. You can find out more at chrisannhall.com or libertyfirstuniversity.com. You heard her mention it several times. If you want to know more about the great information and substance she's presented here in this interview, libertyfirstuniversity.com. Chris Ann, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Oh, it's always an honor, and I'll look forward to coming back.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. Chris Ann Hall, everybody. Folks, this is Conduit News Radio. Look forward to the next interview with Chris Ann Hall, and we'll be back in just a moment.
If you believe the Second Amendment protects your right to defend your home with a firearm, where do you turn if the government confiscates your gun? To the courthouse. The Founding Fathers created your Seventh Amendment right to a civil jury to protect your freedoms. The courthouse is where you fight the overreaching hand of government. And the Brad Hendricks Law Firm is where the fight starts. Call the Brad Hendricks Law Firm at 501-221-0444. The Brad Hendricks Law Firm in Little Rock, standing ready using the Seventh Amendment to protect your Second Amendment rights.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
And I want to say this: we vote, people. We vote. Patriots of Act 746, the main chapter, has over 13,000 members. And the last I saw, and I don't want to misspeak, but 1,500 for the Northeast Arkansas chapter. So we don't just invite our local law enforcement and our politicians and our legislators just to say, "Hey, come over and visit." We want you to know that. We want you to be our voice for what we believe in the state of Arkansas. So we invite everybody to come out and find out what your rights are this Saturday if you can.
All right, Amy Freeman, I appreciate it. You have a great morning. It starts at 2:30. It's in Batesville at the Coltons there in Independence County this Saturday if you want more information. You can also go to Facebook.com, search for Patriots of Act 746, and ask to become a member of this group, educating people about their Second Amendment rights here in the All right, so we're going to have that interview.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
And sometimes what am I doing, a radio show? So we're going to have that interview with Chris Ann Hall up and going on the YouTube channel. Go and subscribe to the YouTube channel to get notifications when we upload specific videos, when we go live, and everything else up at it's the Conduit News channel. And just hit subscribe. Click the little bell for notifications. Now, Conduit News, I'm going to tease this, on Monday has a big announcement. I think everybody's going to be very pleased with that announcement coming up on Monday. And so just stay tuned for that. Really excited to give you guys more access to more content. Let's just say that. All right, so the phone number, 870-275-9799. You can call or text anytime. Leave a voicemail if you'd like, even if you're a troll. And this broadcast is available at conduitnews.com right now, so feel free to check it out. And if you missed the first hour, you should certainly check it out. We talked a little bit about John Brennan, talked about Sarah Huckabee Sanders, talked about China, also had a small business spotlight. So it's all there. Hour number 1 is available on the podcast, iTunes, SoundCloud. We'll see you tomorrow for Johnny Cash Friday. Arkansas, be safe.